Hey everyone, I hope you are well. In this quick demo or tutorial, I'm going to talk about the Zorn palette as well as I'm going to talk about just glazing in general. So this week for my painting students at Ryman Arts, we're going over, or we're starting color. And I'm starting you guys in color very simple. So we're keeping a palette that is the minimum palette, which is generally called a closed palette. So in class, I'm going to go into depth on the Zorn palette and mixing. I'm going to also show you a chart about the Zorn palette and mixing as well in the lecture. Another thing, I will touch a little bit in the lecture on glazing, but this video is going to give you a bit more of an idea of how to glaze. That's one of the things that this video is for. This video, I'm going to try and make it short, you guys. I'm going to do my best. It's very hard, but I'm going to try. All right, another thing that I want to talk about real quick before I get started is that I want to talk a little bit about our palette. So our Zorn palette technically is quite different because our palette in general is different. So it's geared a little bit towards our palette versus Zorn's actual palette. So we have some colors that are just slightly different than normal. Normally his colors are a bit more on the earthy side. So we're only dealing with 4 colors. So we're dealing with our titanium white, as well as we're dealing with our Hassan yellow, and we're also dealing with our cadmium red, and we're dealing with black. So I'm going to move some of these things really quick so you can see my palette in full, and I'm not holding it up, but this is what we are dealing with. So if you think about these 3 colors that are here, and really black isn't actually a color, but we're going to call it that. We're dealing with these 4 colors, and you could definitely get a variety of colors out of these 4 colors. So when it comes to the Zorn palette, you're dealing with primaries. So it's good to kind of have a little bit of a color wheel, because I'm going to go more into depth on color next week. But having a color wheel definitely help, and also having the Zorn palette, which you'll get in class, that actual chart will help as well. But these are basically primary colors. Black is basically a really, really dark blue. So in order to get blue, you have to take a little bit of the black that's here, and our black, because it's lamp black, it's not as cool as ivory black, and ivory black is normally used with Zorn palettes. But you want to take your white that's here, and you want to mix them together. So I'm coming in fairly light with it because I want that blue to shine. So on camera, it's probably looking very gray. But in person, I can tell a difference because my palette has a little bit of a green tint in a way. So it's reading very blue next to my palette. So it's not as blue as the ivory black, but it still gives us kind of a blue shade or a blue tone. I think that's what I'm more so going for. It's a blue tone, meaning that it's a grayish blue. That's what we're looking at. So we have our blue here that kind of gives us our primaries. So if I added, let's say I add green to this because I want to get a green. I'm adding, sorry guys, I'm adding yellow to this because I want to get a green. I have to get it together. So if I add yellow to it, this is going to give me a kind of a toned down green. So if you're seeing, it's turning green, but it's a grayish green in a way. So it's very earthy, just a bit more earthy. But this is the green color that you're getting, because this is definitely that green that we're seeing, but it looks very gray on camera, but this is green. So you can alter this palette to the best of your ability. Although you might saying, oh my god, it's 4 colors, how I'm going to work with these 4 colors, you can definitely get a lot out of these 4 colors. And it's always great to start any project with minimum colors. For me, I remember being in school, and I remember I had a lot of professors that started us with this full palette that I never could understand because it was just way too many colors for me to comprehend. So when I had a professor that talked about the Zorn palette, this palette made so much more sense to me than any other palette I was introduced to. And a lot of times some professors open up with a full palette, which is an open palette, and you have all of these colors that are different temperatures of colors. Sometimes you'll have two yellows, that's one is warm, one is cool, or you have two red, one is warm, one is cool, or you have two blues, one is warm, one is cool, and then you have browns, and then you have these kind of like pop of bright colors or cadmiums. It was just so overwhelming for me. So the Zorn palette, when I was introduced to it, it made so much sense because of the fact that it forces you to mix all of your colors. So coming back to this color wheel, so because we have a minimum palette, and really you could probably get some very intense reds and oranges and yellows and things, your greens are going to be more on the, if you can see here, it's very light, but your greens are going to they're going to be more on the earthy tone, so they're going to move closer to the center of the color wheel, so they're going to be desaturated, meaning they're going to move closer to the grays when you are mixing. So just keep that in mind. You're not going to have these very vibrant, saturated greens or blue greens. Your blue is not going to be strongly and highly saturated as well. So just keep all that in mind, that your tones are going to be a little bit more on the earthy side versus the saturated side when you're mixing these colors. So just think about that and make a little bit more sense of that. But having a color wheel next to you would definitely help you with mixing, as well as having the Zorn chart near you kind of gives you an idea of how to mix the colors as well. But once again, our colors are slightly different because we don't have an earthy yellow, nor is our cadmium like a cadmium it's a cadmium medium, but sometimes you can go with deep to get more of an earthier red as well. So enough on that. So the next thing I definitely want to talk about is glazing, because we're using this very simple palette to glaze. So this is very important that you want to keep in mind what our palette is and how to mix it, because when you're glazing, you guys, the only thing you're doing is you're thinning out your paint with either your medium. I think we have semi-gloss medium, or for me, I have a little bit of gloss glazing liquid. But basically you're thinning out your paint and you're coming over your grisaille. This is a grisaille painting. I did this painting a few demos ago on my YouTube channel, but I'm going to go over it with a glaze, and I'm going to glaze color over it. So for us at Ryman Arts, we've only been dealing with paint dealing with value. We have not gotten into color. So we did our grisaille, which we have here. We also did a Bernai, which is just dealing with value with just brown. So now we can move into how do we add color to our grisaille. So how you do that is by glazing. So this demo is going to be quick and short, but it's going to give you an idea of how to apply glazing. So glazing is just thin color or paint that's layered and layered and layered over, and it starts to look like someone actually painted, but you only started with your values. So that's the fun part about glazing. But just keep in mind, you may have multiple layers and you may have to alter your layers. I'm also going to insert in our demo and also send to you a grisaille painting tutorial from another artist, but he's actually going over his grisaille with glazing of color, so you'll get a little bit more of a longer tutorial versus my very, very short and quick tutorial on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Some of the some of the materials you may need, of course, is your palette, your Zorn palette paint, which is the white, is yellow, or has a yellow, as well as our cadmium medium, and also our black. You're also going to need your brushes. So I have my flat and also my size 8 rounds. You're going to need your medium, so your semi-gloss medium. I have glazing medium, which is slightly different but very, very similar. You're also going to need your some water. So I have my couple of cups of water. And just in case I went through that very fast, these are some of the paints that we're using, which is our titanium. We're also using our lamp black, as well as our Hansen yellow, and our cadmium medium that's here. Alright, so got a little bit of that. As you can see, I got my paper towel ready because I'm ready to go. So I'm going to get a little bit of this glazing medium on my palette as well. And close that off. So once again, this is acrylic. Our medium tend to have a milky surface to it. I don't know why it looks like that, but that's what it is. But it dries clear. Another thing with glazing, keep in mind, do not glaze with tints, meaning that's a color that has a lot of white in it. Or do not glaze with white, because white tends to look very milky when it's glazed over, because you're thinning out that paint. So do your best not to do that. So keep that in mind, and I'll talk more about that as well in class. So really quick, I'm gonna glaze my lovely ball red. So I'm gonna use the cadmium red. I think I'm going to come in with my big brush, that way I can get it done faster. And for this glazing process, I'm not going to talk because I really just want you guys to get the visual, but I'm using my big brush and I'm going to come in with my cadmium red. I'm going to dip some of that glazing medium in it because I want to thin that out as much as possible. Not too much, but I need enough that's thinned out of it. So that's kind of give you an idea how thin I am with the glazing. So I'm going to think of possibly some colors that I can mix up for the background and foreground. That way you can kind of get an idea of it. But I'm not going to get a complete finished glazing product. But I just want you guys to have an understanding of how to do it and what to do from there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, everybody, so this kind of gives you an idea how you can take your grisaille painting and then glaze over color. I also came in, I have a little bit of texture that is here on this side with thicker paint, less transparent, more opaque. So even when you're glazing, you can come back in with heavier paint, and if you want to, let's say this area, I want to make more intense and make my core shadow a lot darker, and my reflected light to shine, I can definitely come back in and do that. I can glaze it over or repaint it however you want to do it, but you could definitely glaze in just a little bit darker in that area. And just to give you kind of an idea of what I mean by that, and I'm going to come in with my round brush and take a little, just a tad bit of that black. And I can glaze in, as you can see, get that core back in. With that thin paint. And I can come in and soften some of my edge. Go over my reflected light just a little bit. And I have my core back in. So glazing is basically about layering paint, thin paint. You could also layer thicker paint, as you can see where I tried to get my texture in. It's a lot of different things that you can definitely do with glazing, but you could definitely get a finished product out of it. This is not a finished product, it's just me showing what you can do with glazing, and how effective it is if you start with a black and white painting or achromatic painting like a grisaille, and glaze color over it, and then adjust your colors to what your painting is and what your values are. So I hope this helps. It should help, but this is just a quick demonstration on how I go about glazing. I don't really use glazing as an artist for a full painting, but if there's an area that I just want color over it and the values are there, I'll glaze over color. But you could definitely do a whole painting in glazing and adjust and fix. So I will see you guys later in the next video or the next clip, and I will see you guys later. Bye guys.